Now it's our customary 1 or 2 minutes after. Do you want to go ahead and get rolling?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. And then, as usual, I'm sure we'll have a few stragglers pop in as we get going here. I think everybody knows Shane and I by now. Just do the quick introduction just for, in case you forgot. I'm Kirk Brewer. I'm the branch manager for Finance of America Mortgage in Chandler, Arizona. I've been doing this mortgage gig for 20 years. It'll be 20 years this June. It seems like it's been a whirlwind with the craziness that we can experience here in the Arizona market, which we're kind of experiencing again. We're in the throes of it right now. So hopefully everybody's buckled in for this one. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Shane for a quick introduction as well.
Yeah, just real quick, and thank you, Kirk, and good to see everybody here this morning. Happy Friday. My name is Shane Sauer. I'm sales manager here at Greystone Title. For those that don't know me, marketing is my game 24/7. It's what it is. So trying to find those listings this year is going to be a real challenge. So need a good partner to help with that. And I like to think I'm that guy. So
Shane, you are that guy.
I try to be.
That's a straight face. I did that once.
And with us, we've got Patrick MacQueen today, which is awesome. He's going to be sharing a little bit about what he's got an event coming up with us on Wednesday, I believe, right? Wednesday morning at 10:30, dealing with COVID-19 impact on evictions and a lot going on with that. We'll be with Patrick in just a second, but we'll kick it back to Kirk and let's talk about some rates, man. Good stuff this week. What do you think?
Yeah, nothing real exciting. I mean, it's really exciting, but we've had the same real exciting for weeks upon months. The market still hasn't really picked a direction here in 2021. Well, technically it has. The direction's sideways. Okay, there's kind of 3 directions when you're talking about a market. It's either up, it's down, or it's sideways. So far in 2021, the market's been sideways down here at these really incredible low rates that we're experiencing. So we're still dragging along that bottom. We're seeing there's pressure that we're seeing that hasn't translated yet into any noticeable movement in rates, but there's definitely pressure to the upside. There's obviously, and we've talked about this so far into this year, well, actually kind of since the election last year, there's potentially some political policy changes that could create inflation, monetary policy. Powell just spoke this week saying he wants to tolerate more than their usual inflation, yet they can't seem to drum up any inflation. And they're going to keep their overnight lending rate at 0 for the foreseeable future, which is well through 2021 into 2022. If you guys recall from past discussions, inflation is the enemy of interest rates because it gobbles up the return on investment for those people who invested in those fixed income assets. So the pressure seems to be in the upward direction for rates, at least short term, but we haven't seen it yet. So I'll just run through rates real quick for you. I'll share my screen so you can see where we're at right now. But from that perspective, it's actually been a little boring because we've just been dragging along these really awesome lows. You guys see my screen? Yeah. So this is our website. If you go out to loangeeks.com or theloangeeks.com, and there's a few others I think that'll get you there too. I bought all the domains, Loan Nerds, and you got it. But it's loangeeks.com will get you there. This is our homepage. There's several ways you can access rates on our page. The easiest is just right here on the top menu bar. Rates are updated every day of the week in the mornings. I try and get to it first thing in the morning, but sometimes based on when rates are made available or workload, because I do it manually, it's not automated. It could be a little bit later in the morning, but it's a great resource for you guys to just kind of monitor where rates are at and where they're trending. So if you click on the mortgage rates here, it's going to take you to our rate page, which looks just like this. And I updated this at about, what time was it? 8:09 this morning. And as you'll see, this probably looks exactly like it did when we did this last Friday. We saw a little bit of movement down midweek, and then we've seen the bond markets kind of give back a little bit here as we rolled into this morning. So real quick, I'll run through them. On the conventional 15-year fixed for a well-qualified buyer, we're looking at 2.375. So we're still below 2.5% on a 15-year fixed conventional purchase. On the 30-year fixed, we're still below 3% at 2.99. We had ticked down to 2.875-ish, and then we're kind of right back up near that 3% ceiling. Again, that's 0 points. That's at par. Government loans, these things have been holding really nice and steady, which is good. They tend to be a little bit of a barometer of risk in the market because of the nature of those loans and the clients they cater to. And those have been holding steady at about 2 7/8, 2.875 on both the FHA 30-year fixed and on the VA 30-year fixed. There's no premium pricing in those, like you had seen for quite a few months following the CARES Act and all this forbearance issues that came out of the CARES Act, but that premium pricing has gone away. So those are at par. So the only points they're carrying are their associated funding fees, the 1.75% funding fee on an FHA, and it can vary on the VA based on your service, disability, things like that, but it can be up to 3.3% on the VA. And then last but not least, on the jumbo 30-year fixed, we're holding steady at about 3 1/8 there. Again, that's at par, no points for a well-qualified buyer. So like I said, we're pretty much right where we did last week. Still waiting for the market to pick a direction, but even after Powell spoke this week, the market's content to go sideways right now. And I've said it every week so far this year, and I'll keep saying it as long as we are here. I know it's tough for buyers in this market. Inventory is hard to come by, but they might regret it if on the fence waiting for more inventory. If you've got buyers who are interested, get them in the market, you know, put some boxing gloves on them, out there fighting for what inventory there is, because these rates are awesome. And these rates mean they've got more buying power today than they may have 6 months from today. So that's my soapbox on rates this week.
Yeah, it's going to be a super competitive year for listings and try and find buyers property. I'm talking to more and more people about the exact same thing. I was on a webinar earlier this week with and I'll get into that here in a minute, but I was on a webinar here earlier this week with the guys that put out the Altos reports that some of you get, those market updates. You know, one of the reasons they're targeting or saying the inventory is so low is because of the low interest rates and folks buying another home without selling the one they're in, you know, so people are gobbling up more of the inventory that way as well. And that's true. I mean, it just is what it is. He didn't point to that being the sole reason, but it is a contributor for sure. One thing I want to share, and again, we'll get into this. I want to give Patrick plenty of time to chat and get questions from you guys. So I'll be brief here, but I want to run through just a couple things. I'm going to share my screen real quick, and I'm going to pick on Chandler again. And here's those market updates. And
oh my goodness,
I was on earlier this week, and I can share that link with you if you like it. Really good information. It was like an hour long, but great information, kind of talking about the U.S. as a whole, the nationwide inventory shortage, and he did focus on a few different cities, Phoenix not being one of them, although one of the things he did point out was Phoenix is second in the nation for price increases, behind New York, which I thought was interesting. We were number 2 here, which, hey, at least, you know, least we're up there, right, in the standings. That's great, but interesting to see. One thing I want to point out on these market updates is the fact that I'm going to pick on Chandler again because this is where I'm at and this is where I live. But I want to kind of show you, median prices, buyer seller index here, their market action index, which is showing Phoenix is a very high sellers market right now. I mean, and that stands to reason with inventory levels being what they are. Most of you have seen this thing before and know what it does. It's super interactive. It's super easy to share on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or email it out, print it out, whatever you want. Shows you inventory last week, shows you what was absorbed last week. This is always pulling the week prior and getting that information. Then it comes out to us on Monday. It comes to me on Monday. It goes to everybody else on Wednesdays. But wanted to show you this too. And for those that have been on this show before, you've seen this. And this is something I cobbled together from all of those Altos reports that I get on Mondays. Kind of shows you the valley in general and a lot of the second home destinations, which I really noticed this week. Median or average days on market are going up in the White Mountains and everything through there. And that stands to reason too with being winter and folks not as anxious to get up there as they are in the summer when they go up to escape the heat. Now it's cold and it's supposed to snow this weekend in Pine Top, and I'm kind of sad about that. But I'm kind of ready for winter to end up there. But it is what it is. But what I've seen here again, inventory levels still creeping downward, although the numbers aren't as quite as jumping out at me as they were at one time, but they are still trending down and prices still kind of going up. There are some decreases here that I did notice here, but nothing overly shocking this past week. But again, if you'd like to start getting this little report, this Valley Stats one, let me know. I put this together on Monday mornings and shoot it out to an ever-growing group of agents that are getting this thing. I did want to share one last thing on here, and this is something that if you'd like this, so going back to those Altos reports, they did share on the webinar this little booklet. And this is a great way, and it explains really in detail how to use these Altos reports in your business, how to farm the data in there and use this to your advantage. So if you'd like this, I can put a link in the chat box, I think, or I can send it to you. I think I can just send it to you, actually. Maybe I can link it. You can grab it out of there. It's 42 pages. This thing's a pretty good sized book, but a lot of good information about how to use those Altos reports in your business and what all this means in great detail. So I'd be more than happy to share that with you. So I'll pop it into the chat box and let you download it from there if you like. And I do have this that webinar posted on Facebook on our probate site right now, but I'm going to try to bring it out in the mainstream as well. And I also have a link for it somewhere here too, and I can share that with you if you'd like to check that out and watch that webinar. It was very informative. Mike Simonson from Altos Research was on there talking about it. He does a weekly webinar, so very cool stuff. Anyways, I want to get into Patrick. I want to give Patrick plenty of time to chat today, to enlighten us. We've got a great event coming up with him on Wednesday. This is a little preview to that, and it's such a pleasure to have the wizard here with us on Friday morning.
I've been waiting to have you back, Patrick. Get an update on what COVID's doing, and all these moratoriums and all this good stuff. So, be nice to get brought back up to speed.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me, and thanks for the compliment, Shane, for sure, and both you guys. But it's certainly an interesting, I don't know the word, juxtaposition or whatever. I don't want to sound too legally, but you see the buy-sell market, the traditional sales market, and it's crazy, and then you see the leasing side, and it's ugly, and so it's a pretty interesting sort of I don't whatever the word is, I don't know, dichotomy something. But next week we're going to get into during the webinar, we're going to get into what landlords can actually do if their tenant's not paying. And right now we have this huge CDC moratorium. It was recently extended. It was set to expire at the end of January. So a couple of weeks ago, it was set to expire. Then it was extended into March and March 31st. And so the CDC moratorium basically says, look, you can't evict. You can't evict these tenants if they are able to produce this sort of hardship affidavit, and it's a CDC hardship affidavit. And you really can't call into question the statements being made or whether the tenants are being truthful in completing this affidavit. So we've come up with a list of about 7 or 8 things that you can do. If your tenant is producing one of these CDC affidavits, and we're going to go through each one of those opportunities. I got further bad news, and I was sharing it with Shane just prior to us logging on. And the further bad news is the Arizona Supreme Court has now imposed some new rules on landlords as well. Landlords and frankly, property managers and attorneys. And the Arizona Supreme Court basically sets our rules of procedure. So how we interact with the courts, how we interact with other parties, how we interact with other attorneys. They set the rules for that. And what they did last week was create a new rule for eviction practice. And it makes it more difficult for a landlord to get out a tenant. And I'll just give you a sneak preview of what those 2 things are. Number 1, a judge deliberating over an eviction hearing now has to specifically write out their findings of fact. And you might say, well, what does that really mean? That doesn't sound like much. Well, ultimately, what was happening in a lot of these evictions, or traditionally what was happening in evictions, is the judge would say, I find you guilty of forcible entry detainer. I'm going to issue a writ of restitution, and the tenant's gone. Well, now the judge actually has to go through all of the steps to outline that they've considered the CDC moratorium. They outline all of the facts. And what that ultimately does is it puts more of a burden on the landlord, the property manager, and the attorney, because we're the ones who have to prepare the written statement of facts or the written factual scenario for the judge to adopt. So guess what? That costs time, that costs money. And so that's step 1. So there's written findings of fact that the judges have to provide, have to produce in any eviction hearing now. Okay, so that's an extra hour or 2. That's an extra $500 onto your already expensive eviction. The other thing that we found to be interesting was that in this new administrative order that the Supreme Court came out with just last week, there's now what's called a rebuttable presumption that the CDC moratorium automatically applies. And so now a judge sitting in an eviction hearing is going to automatically assume that the CDC moratorium applies to this tenant, irrespective of whether the tenant's even making that argument or not, irrespective of whether the tenant even produces that hardship affidavit. So now you have to put on a little bit bigger of a showing to show why the CDC situation does not apply to this set of facts, to this eviction. And so guess what? That costs more money now too. And so what we've found, evictions are actually down, right? Evictions are down year over year because of the moratoriums, et cetera. But when you do go through an eviction, they're now more expensive. And so I don't know the exact number, but I would say it's 2 to 3 times as much money now, because what we see tenants doing is they're fighting these eviction actions. They're using the CDC moratorium improperly, which costs more time, which costs landlords requires landlords to do more to prove their case. And so it's tough. And so it's completely opposite of what's going on in the traditional sales market. In the traditional sales market, we've seen some interesting things. I've been asked some really interesting questions by a lot of real estate agents. For instance, hey, what do you think of this seller contingency? The seller wants to be able to sell their home and maybe upgrade, but what if they can't find that replacement property? What if they can't get into the more expensive place? Well, they don't want to sell anymore. They want the ability to have this cancellation right. They want to cancel. So we used to see a lot of buyer contingencies. Hey, I got to sell my house. Well, the sellers are now saying, well, I got to find a new house. I find that one fascinating. The other one that was semi-troubling, I guess, perhaps is, well, I want to submit an offer. I want to be the most attractive buyer out there. I want to submit an offer, and I want to submit the BINSR at the same time, where I'm saying my due diligence is completed. Is that problematic? And I'm like, Yeah, probably. You better have a big sign off from the client, from your broker, that says, I understand what I'm getting myself into here. I understand that I'm waiving certain rights that I would traditionally have. So it's caused some pretty interesting scenarios and thoughts, and so we've come up with these CYA documents for agents to get their clients to sign if they're truly willing to do that. Now, I don't recommend that an agent actually be the one who's out there saying, hey, you should waive the BINSR and send in a completed BINSR with your offer. If somebody comes up with it, then if a buyer comes up with that on their own, then you say, well, maybe talk to somebody about it. Maybe, check all these boxes and make sure you're okay with doing this, because it's happening with more frequency now. So that's created an interesting situation. So on the leasing side, again, it's a mess. Hopefully you have some good tenants who are paying and they're not really affected by COVID. But if you're not, I've got a list of about 7 or 8 things. We're going to talk about them that might get you a little bit of relief, might be able to get these folks out of there and get somebody else new. So.
Yeah, I'm kind of having flashbacks of the last housing crisis where you had homeowners who were foreclosed upon suing the lender for foreclosing on them.
Yeah.
Now you've got tenants potentially maybe not being the one being sued, but essentially fighting the fact that, hey, you can't evict me even though I haven't paid your rent for the last 6 months. Do you have a statistic, Patrick, of how many tenants are not paying rent? Percentage wise, is there any numbers out there?
I would say 100% of the landlords who call me have tenants who are not paying.
Okay.
That's just
how many of those are?
I don't, and I've seen numbers all over the place. So I've talked to property managers. Some are like, oh, it's only 7 to 10%, and then I've talked to other property managers who are like, no, it's about 30 to 35%. And so it's really tough to gauge that true number. Before Wednesday, I'll try to come up with some solidified numbers there, but the numbers shift too, because in some instances you got these people who may pay 1 month and then they don't pay the next month, and so they're being strategic about it. And so it's an interesting place where people are putting themselves. So it looks like there was a question on this as well. Let me see what that came up with. Doesn't the tenant have to be affected by COVID not to pay? Lydia, that's a great question. The answer is truthfully yes, but practically no. And what I mean by that is, you, as a tenant, if you want to be able to qualify or to use the CDC hardship and the CDC affidavit and the CDC moratorium, you have to say that you've been affected by COVID. You have to say, and you have to attest under penalty of perjury that COVID is affecting you, that you're likely to be homeless if you're evicted. But the problem there is that the landlords cannot question that. The landlords cannot do anything in court to say you're being untruthful in signing that affidavit. The courts are going to say, you aren't the person that can make that up. You aren't the person, you as the landlord, who can this. And so when that happens, the landlords are stuck. And so from well, is that because of HIPAA? So somebody asked, is that because of HIPAA? Well, no, in the CDC moratorium, it basically says only people who test the veracity of an affidavit is the FBI or the federal government. You as a landlord have to, because we don't want to clog the courts with whether somebody's being truthful or not. So it's pretty crazy. It's really crazy. So you can't ask for evidence. You can't ask for evidence of compliance under that CDC. It's automatically presumed that the CDC application or that the CDC moratorium applies. So you have to go around. If your tenant signs one of those affidavits, you have to go around and figure out a different way to get them out. And whether that's through, doing more inspections and saying there are pets, there's unauthorized, or there's unpermitted damage, there's unpermitted guests here. Those are really the ways you're going to have to get around that. So the CDC, if somebody signs that CDC moratorium hardship letter, the only people who can contest that is the federal government, because you're signing it under penalty of perjury, and you're attesting to the CDC and to the landlord, and that's the federal agency. And so the only people who can really question that are the federal government. And so that's the frustrating part. So you have to get around that. You have to figure out a way around that. Let's see if there was another. Okay, so Audrey had a good question here too. So do these tenant rules apply to homes with mortgages on them versus homes that are owned free and clear? I got bad news for you there. So previously, the CARES Act was what was out there. The CARES Act basically said, listen, you can't evict, you can't charge late fees if you're a landlord that has what's called a covered property. And a covered property meant that you had a federally insured or federally backed mortgage loan, Fannie, Freddie, FHA, that sort of thing. And that expired. So the CARES Act is now gone. Okay. So previously, the prior CARES Act basically said, hey, yes, if you have a mortgage that's federally insured or federally backed, you can't do an eviction. So that allowed people who had free and clear mortgages or free and clear homes to evict, no problem. There wasn't an issue at all. Now the CDC comes out and says, what we're doing is we're classifying people as covered persons. So it doesn't even matter if you have a mortgage. It doesn't even matter who holds the mortgage or the loan. None of that matters. A covered person under the CDC's Act is much broader than what the CARES Act previously did. The covered person is anybody who can sign that affidavit that I just talked about. That's all it is.
And
Super broad.
that's under what, Patrick?
What's that?
And that's under what? Who's instituted that new feature?
That's the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control.
Okay.
And where does their authority come from, unlike Congress? Just asking. For a friend.
Well, you want to get into this big political debate? No, I'm just kidding.
No, right. We have a legislature.
Honest to God, I have no clue. And there are actually some cases out there where people are contesting that authority and saying, look, you do not have authority to do this. And what they're saying, their rationale, and I agree with you. I've never seen anything like this, obviously. And I agree with you. I don't know how they can just legislate like this and affect so many people. The interesting thing about the CDC's moratorium, here's their stated rationale, okay? We want to prevent or slow down the virus. And therefore, we want the way we're going to do that is by slowing down interstate travel. That's what it says in the basis for the moratorium. Okay, so we're gonna make it so people can't get evicted and travel. Well, hold on a second. Isn't there a much easier way to stop? If your true goal is to stop interstate travel, why do it to the landlords? What are we doing here? Aren't there other ways to stop interstate travel? I mean, if you look at the CDC moratorium, right in the text of it, it actually says we want to slow down interstate travel. That is our stated basis for this moratorium. Okay, great. I got a good idea. And it's not stopping landlords from collecting rent. I mean, there seems to be that there's other ways to go about their stated goal. And so that's why people are really frustrated with this one.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. And I could see a ton of frustration. What if a landlord currently has a vacant property? Are there things they can do before leasing it out now to prepare themselves? For instance, instead of doing a long-term lease, could they maybe do leases for 1 or 2 or 3 months so that those expire regardless of whether the person's paying them or not? And so therefore you don't renew the lease. Limit your exposure.
Well, there's an argument, and some judges buy it and some don't. That basically says, look, if you do a notice of non-renewal for these folks, they can still use the CDC moratorium to stick around. And so it really depends on what judge you get. So let's say that you do a month to month, and then you send somebody a notice that you're not going to renew them for the next month. Well, what if they say, oh, the CDC moratorium still applies to these situations? Some judges are buying that. Some judges are saying, no, these people are now trespassing after this. So it's a crapshoot. And so what we're recommending people do is making sure that, you get good checking account information, meaning, you get checks from these folks, and you're not taking payments by Zelle or something where you can't go back and figure out and get their tracking information on their checks. If you have to sue them later for the rent. We're trying to encourage people to get more people obligated on the leases. So parents, friends, whatever it is, try to get more people who you can stick with a payment. And there's some other stuff we'll talk about a little bit more on Wednesday, but there's some stuff that'll work, some stuff just won't. And so it's tough.
Well, Wednesday is going to be, I think the time we're going to have for Wednesday is going to fly by. Is just fraught with questions. It's an interesting time we're living in. And I wouldn't want to be a landlord right now. And I definitely wouldn't want to own commercial real estate, which is a whole nother topic that we're not even going to touch on today. But
it's crazy, man. And I'll tell you, like I said, so what we had to do was I started feeling bad for clients who would hire me. And then they say, how come this is so expensive? This is so much more expensive than it ever has been. And I'm like, it is, you're right. And so what we've done is we've created like self-help packages. So instead of doing it, from us and incurring a bunch of legal fees to just wind up at the same place, here you go. Here's $750. Here's all the paperwork you could ever possibly need. Do it yourself. And some people have taken that up because I've seen some of these evictions where the tenants are just, grasping at straws, and the judges, they kind of have a heart for them maybe. And, some do, some don't. But, I've seen where a typical residential eviction is $5,000 or $6,000 now, where it used to be $2,000. I mean, and so it's, the hope is that you get in and get out and get these things over with quickly, but it's just getting harder and harder to do that.
well, and at the end of the $5,000 is the tenant out. And they're still in your house.
Yeah. I mean, and then it just becomes, all right, well, now I'm going to sue you for all the attorney's fees I had to spend, and you're just going to continue to hide from me and avoid it and
get a judgment and chase them for the rest of your life.
And so it's very, very frustrating. Very, very frustrating.
Good deal. Any questions? Any other questions for Patrick? I know we've got him back on Wednesday, so if you think of something, there's one from Darcy.
Looks like we gave her an ulcer. It's frustrating. And I literally had a call before this today, and somebody's like, I trusted this tenant, and they just kept abusing the process. They just kept making up stuff to extend it, and there was literally nothing I could tell this particular landlord to say, hey, look, well, here's the magic bullet, here's what you need to do, because there really isn't one. And even the Arizona Supreme Court has made it more difficult now. We'll talk more about it on Wednesday for sure, but it's a tough one for landlords.
Absolutely. Well, Patrick, I knew you had to bug out, so we wanted to get you in early, but he'll be back with us at 10:30 on Wednesday morning. Hopefully you all get your invites. If you haven't, let me know. I'll make sure to get that to you if you don't have it.
Sounds good. Look forward to it. See you Wednesday.
Thanks, Patrick.
All right.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, I encourage you guys, don't miss it if you can be there. Patrick, he's like Mike Abel. We're very blessed to have both of those guys
definitely
join us. They're always a wealth of knowledge to help all of us be better at what we do. So don't miss it if you can be there. If you can't be there, we try and record these things.
Yeah.
Posted. And in fact, Shane and I are kind of working on some stuff now where we can actually get this stuff posted and more accessible for you guys with every one of our Friday meetings, as well as the classes that we're going to have like next week, Patrick. So stay tuned for that. We'll be giving you guys some announcements on that as well.
I did want to share one quick thing that I picked up. I posted the link to the webinar I was on the other day. And in there, that link, I believe you can download that book I was showing earlier. I think it's all in there. For some reason, I couldn't bring the book in the chat. I don't know why. But one thing I did is, and this is for you, Lydia, really. The speaker talked about forbearance in a little bit of detail, not a ton, but he said there were 5 million people in forbearance in the United States. And right now, as of right now, there are still 2.7 million folks in forbearance across the United States. That's one of the facts that I wrote that down so I would remember that, because it really stood out. I'm like, okay, there are a lot of people in forbearance. It's interesting. We've talked about it a zillion times on this show and in person and whatever else, but kind of stunning. And
Well,
I
it
know
sounds like half of them have come out of forbearance.
yes,
And hopefully they've either sold and not been stripped of their equity, like we've talked about, or they came out and were able to work something out with their lender, so they were able to stay in their home. So that bodes well, hopefully, that we don't see a wave, maybe just a trickle of actual foreclosures. And if we can, like we talked about previous weeks, if we can do what little we can do as individuals to educate our client bases of what options they have available, we can keep them from falling prey to these iBuyers out there who we know all they're going to do is strip these poor people of their equity and put it in their investor pockets.
yes.
So I just have to make one comment while we're on the call right here. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I got 10 inspections to do today, and I can guarantee you they're all open door, that the open door's buying them.
Yeah.
Are these all from the same servicer, Lydia?
Yes, I have one servicer.
So Open Door obviously got in the back door.
So my
The
servicer hasn't told me they're open door. I have discovered they are open door, but they made $1 billion back December 21st when they went public on the stock market. So now they're out buying all kinds of properties. But I've discovered that, so there's a little twist to this thing. So I've discovered that there's a middle person that's buying them. So the open door is actually working with third-party people that are going in and saying, well, I'll buy your house, and they're assigning it to Open Door. So that's what's happening. Open Door.
Dodd-Frank made straw buyers illegal.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you, I've discovered this. Open Door has just had my servicing company has paid my servicing company to go out and do these inspections. So they're not buying them directly from the servicing company, but they are buying them from a third party.
Oh, so legal.
It's a shame. I mean, obviously we need the inventory, right? But I'd much rather see that inventory hit the market where the actual homeowner's getting their equity. That's really disappointing.
No clue. The homeowner has no clue. And these are not bad houses. There's a few that have been really crappy houses, but for the most part, I mean, I went to one yesterday in Chandler off of, what was it? Gilbert and Pecos, I think it was. And oh my gosh, it was a beautiful home.
Yeah.
That goes back to what I said earlier about the percentage of price increases where you've got the open doors come in and throwing some lipstick on it and then listing it higher. That's the whole thing. We're second in the nation,
I don't think they're going to need to put lipstick on it. Half these are already done.
Oh, they'll just increase the price then.
Yeah.
Yep.
No lipstick.
They'll clean the carpet, paint.
Yeah. And Kirk, getting back to what you said a little bit ago about educating your clients, during this seminar that I posted, they did a poll and asked the agent, and it was all agents and probably people like me that were on that actually subscribed to the Altos reports and whatever. And they had a poll, and the poll was, are you educating? It was pretty much that. Are you educating your clients or people that you talk to about forbearance? 80% were not.
Because nobody understands it. You're probably one of the few lenders that are talking about forbearance. Nobody's talking about it. No agents don't understand it. I don't know if Tina's talking about it in her discussions, which she should, but you know what pisses me off is someone like Dave Ramsey, who's got billions of people listening to him every single week, should have been talking about this from day one, what they are, what they're not, what if you should get involved in them. But now we're all having to do it and agents don't understand it themselves.
Yeah, Dave Ramsey's kind of got a different agenda than I think we
He
do.
does.
I'm just going to use that as kind of a plug for what we do here every Friday.
Yeah.
Guys, invite your peers to come here. You know, it's basically 30 minutes. Yeah, we run over a little bit when the topic, you know, allows for it, but it's 30 minutes once a week on a Friday morning, you know, when you'd be having your morning coffee or tea anyway. And we can help each other and expand our knowledge base and ultimately help some of these people, you know, from falling prey to some of these iBuyers, so that they can turn around and get back in the market in 6 months when they get a job. They lose their equity, they may be permanently out of the market. So yeah, the more people that can come here and hang out with us and we can all just talk about these topics, the better, for sure. I wish there were more venues like Shane and I are doing here to just hang out with you guys and open forum and an open discussion. I love what we do here every Friday. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, and we're in the process of putting together a Facebook page and everything else. We'll be able to post these and maybe have a discussion outside of during the week. I mean, we'll be able to check in if people, you know, so it'll be more of a ongoing thing with the live things still on Friday. I did talk to Darcy during the week, and Darcy, I don't want me to put you on the spot, but you had something you wanted to bring up today, and
Too late.
And we're all ears. You got a captive audience here.
Yeah, if you've got a good topic for discussion.
Okay, well, I found out it was really interesting this week. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So I was trying to line up my 16,000 showings for my buyers, as we all are, and I came across a new way to sell properties, and it's probably been around for a while. There's a listing right in Gilbert, and it's being listed now by an online bidding platform. Anyone else encounter this out there? Well, I suggest you get on and get educated about it. Kind of interesting because what they want you to do, they're going to host an open house Saturdays and Sundays, period. That's your only time to get in.
Yep.
And then they have the bidding period usually for 7 days. Starts before you actually can show the house, and then it ends after.
Is there a link that you can post in the chat so people can educate themselves a little bit on this service?
Yes, I can. I'll verbally say it, and then I'll try to get it in the chat because I can only do one thing at a time.
You sound like me.
It's usahomebids.com.
USA Home Bids.
usahomebids.com. And they'll have a video. You can go through their website. What I found was really interesting is that whatever the buyer bids, whatever price they bid, they are attaching a 3% buyer premium is what they're calling it.
Yep.
So say the house is listed for $340 and they go up to $369 on their bidding site. They then will have to pay the 3% on top of it. So you're basically paying the seller fees.
Yeah.
Right.
It's crazy. It just is crazy.
So Darcy, I don't know how long you've been doing real estate, but years ago they had auction companies that would come in and do kind of the same thing, and you had to pay anywhere from, Kurt, I don't know if you remember this, or Shane, but and I'm trying to think when it was, if it was before the crash or if it was right after the crash, but you'd go in, you have so much time to show your client, and then you have to put this bidding on through their website, and there were different ones, and they charged anywhere from 5 to 10% or something like that for the same thing. So and the bids were, I had clients that would go in and look at these homes and they're like, oh my gosh, I love it. Well, it would go $100,000 more than what it actually was, because when you're bidding, it's
Right.
a whole different. I mean, we have a hard enough time right now with the properties we have with 50 and 75 and 28 contracts coming in at one time. Let alone, doing an auction house where you're going to get like, it's going to go crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
Now, is this service cutting you guys out of the picture?
No, they're not. They're actually saying that during the open house, they want your realtor to attend with you, but if not, they will assign a realtor.
Okay, so they're the listing agent essentially as the
Yes.
auction house, and then you come in as the buyer's agent.
Yeah, so after you
Okay.
get the winning bid, and you have to actually have a credit card on file with them for $500. If you do not perform within 24 hours and have an executed contract, they'll just charge, the credit card. So it's not just a, crazy bidding ghost system going on. But then, and that's when then the agent steps in, and they're offering, it looks like a 2.5% commission as a buyer's agent.
That doesn't surprise me. Hey, let me ask you guys this, because we've got a pool of agents here, and I don't know the answer to it. I think maybe I do, but what would be what incentive are they offering people to sell their houses through them versus using you guys? Where would the appeal be?
Yeah.
What's their hook?
When I went through the video, my personal feelings, and I can only speak to that, was that it's actually, it makes it much more difficult for my buyer to get that house. It kind of puts the burden of, I don't want to be liable to bid on this house for my client. I would want them to get on and do their own bidding personally, because if there's anything misconstrued, they overbid or what they told me they want to bid, I don't want to be responsible for a third-party site. And so I kind of told my buyers, if you're interested in this, I'm happy to represent you after you get the winning bid, if that's
Right.
works out for you. But I just, I'll walk beside you, but I'm not going to be involved in the bidding personally.
So you better get a buyer broker agreement.
Yeah.
You better make sure you do that.
You're right.
Yeah, that's another question I have. How many of you guys use buyer broker agreements on every single buyer transaction? Raise your hands. Nobody? Always curious which ones use it. I know a lot of agents are kind of afraid to use it, and I'm kind of like, my opinion's always been, look, if you aren't willing to sign this, then how do I know you're not going to walk off on me?
We have a guy at our office that gets one for every single person.
Yeah.
I know.
Every
I
single
mean,
one.
the enforceability we all know is kind of difficult, but it's the intent, right? So
I know an agent that does it on every single one, and even if something happens, he's still going after his money. It's and he gets it.
well, you guys work hard. I mean, we're getting picked on from every angle, both our professions, with the iBuyers and the Quicken Loanses of the world, and everybody's thinking everybody can do what we do, and just any Joe Schmo, and that's absolutely not the case. There's dedicated professionals, and then there's those part-time weekend warriors, and I'm a firm believer in using the tools available to us. So I was always curious who's using that buyer broker agreement. So there was one thing I wanted to share with you guys, for all of those folks, and I think most everybody was with us last week, who did not see the Barry Habib event from the week before. I just wanted to reiterate again, it was incredible. If you haven't seen it, I'm going to put the link in chat. I highly suggest you go bookmark that. And when you just got a little bit of downtime, if you want to know is best as anybody can read the tea leaves on how 2021 is going to play out, watch this. I think it will give you a lot of confidence in how you're going to approach this year. Barry is a tremendous resource, and he was very kind to spend an hour plus with us and the folks we work with here at Finance of America and share his knowledge. So I'm going to throw the link in the chat. And if you haven't seen it yet, bookmark it. And when you got time, watch it. It's a wealth of knowledge. And that's pretty much all I have for this week.
And Helen, I did hear about that too, where Zillow's trying to buy showing time. I forgot who I was talking to about that. It could have
They
been
already
you.
did buy it.
Yeah, that's what I heard too.
They already did buy it.
I heard it's a done deal, which brought me a whole conversation. I forgot who the heck I was talking to. And Darcy, it could have been you. And I can't. If it is, I apologize. I mean, why isn't NAR? Why didn't they buy it? Why don't they develop their own software? As a competition. It was an agent I was talking to who was up in arms about that because now there's Zillow. Oh, you could probably, sure you could rent it back, but man, haven't we fueled Zillow enough? To be honest, just a thought.
Don't get me going about Zillow.
Yeah, I know.
It's like blasphemy. It's like Voldemort. Okay, that is the one that shall remain nameless. The Z word. That's a curse word.
Showing time was such a great tool, and agents mostly really loved it. And now it's a Zillow thing. So
that's
again,
crazy.
Why isn't NAR, with all the dues that they're pulling in, why aren't they developing software to keep for their folks? I don't.
Don't you know NAR is the one that's done all this crap to us, and we've been paying them. That's why they're getting sued right now. I mean,
and they continue to do it.
They continue to do it. They are screwing us.
Yeah. It's amazing.
So you guys are going to get spammed by Zillow, and somehow they're going to be farming out your listings through the showing time. There's some devious plot behind that they're going to find another way to cut you guys out of the deals. Not that I'm a conspiracy theorist, but I'm starting to become one.
So after seeing all that stuff at the Capitol a few weeks ago, Zillow's got a brick and mortar downtown. Why don't we just organize a march?
Yeah.
Just a thought. I'll put on the horns. Whatever.
You're claiming the horns and the fur.
The fur, yeah, I'd be down with that.
All right.
Good stuff.
All right. Well, it's 9:23. If anybody has anything else to bring up, love to discuss it with you. Otherwise, if not, I think we'll wrap it up. Don't miss Patrick next Wednesday, 10:30, Shane?
10:30.
Right. And then we're here, same bat time, same bat channel, every Friday morning at 8:30. Come hang out with us, get your coffee. And by the way, tell your friends to come hang out with us too.
Absolutely.
The more the merrier. All righty. Everybody have an awesome weekend.
Take care. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great week. And
Thank you.